Hey, Robbie, we're off.
Excellent. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this this evening's virtual cabinet meeting hosted by Bassett Law District Council. Given the challenging situation that we all face following the outbreak of COVID-19, the law has been changed to allow councils to host virtual meetings rather than requiring councillors to be present in the committee chamber when making a decision. And this keeps everyone safe by maintaining a social distance and also allows business to be conducted in an appropriate manner. Now, it's very important that all councillors can hear each other. And so what I will do in a moment is invite cabinet members in alphabetical order to introduce themselves, and in so doing, test their broadband connection. So first of all, if I could turn to Councillor Dukes, please.
Here, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Here, Chair.
Thank you. My connection is working just fine. Councillor Lee.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Scawthorne.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor White.
Good evening, Chair.
Good evening. We also are joined by liaison members this evening. So if I could just turn to Councillor Brand.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Fielding.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Quigley.
Present.
Thank you. In addition, we also have a number of officers with us this evening to support the meeting. So if I could turn to the list of names that I have in front of me here. Mr. Neil Taylor.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. David Armiger.
Yes, good evening, Chair.
Thank you. David Hill.
Yes, I'm present, Chair.
Thank you. Steve Wormold.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Steve Brown.
Good evening, Chair.
Good evening. Alison Craig.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Karen Childs.
Good evening, Chair.
Good evening. Also supporting the meeting, Linda Dorr.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. And Ellen Hinsley.
Present, Chair.
Thank you very much. Now, if during the meeting we do lose connectivity or the meeting becomes inquorate for any reason, then the live stream, or the live stream fails, I should say, then we shall adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes just to allow for the connection to be re-established and for people to rejoin. Now, there are confidential items on the agenda for this evening, and when we reach that point of the meeting, the live stream will be called to an end, and at that point, councillors, we will ensure that everyone is able to continue with the meeting, albeit in private session, and that everyone is fully compliant with the code of conduct. Now, given that this is a virtual meeting, there's no corporate responsibility for fire alarm procedures or so on, as we ordinarily would. However, I would like to highlight that this committee is being live streamed on social media, so all participants just please be aware of your actions and take appropriate safety precautions from the place where you are joining the meeting from. And just to help everyone hear each other, can I please remind everyone to just switch your microphones off when you're not speaking? That will just help as well. So first of all, I will turn to agenda item 1, which is the suspension of council procedure rules for 15 minutes to allow for questions from members of the public. And members of the public have been given the opportunity to ask a question at the meeting, although I understand no requests have been received, and I will just double check that with the committee clerk.
That's correct, Chair. We haven't received any, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. In which case I'll turn to agenda item 2, which is apologies. And have any apologies been received this evening?
None, Chair. Everyone is present. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Next, agenda item 3 is to receive declarations of interest by members and officers. And at this point, I'll just pause again, just to inquire if any declarations of interest have been received at this point.
Nothing's been received by me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If any declarations of interest do need to be raised, then please call out at the appropriate time and we'll be able to deal with that. So agenda item 4 is minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of December of 2020 and the 5th of January 2021, to be found at pages 7 through to 27. I will turn to Cabinet members to ask if they can be accepted as an accurate record. I'll take them on block, I can see colleagues in agreement with that course of action. Thank you. So I'll take those as agreed. Agenda item 5 is the minutes for action and implementation list, to be found at pages 29 to 34 of the agenda. And at this point, I'll pause to inquire if there are any comments or observations with the contents of that item. If not, and I don't believe there are, then I will move on to item 6, which is the outstanding minutes list, to be found at pages 35 to 38 of the agenda. Again, are there any comments or observations in relation to that item? I'll take that as a no and move on to agenda item 7, which is the forward plan, to be found at pages 39 to 41 of the agenda. And I will ask if there are any comments or observations, first of all. And to follow that, I will ask if members are happy to approve that forward plan. And I can see that colleagues are in agreement with that and there's no dissent from that. Thank you very much. Turning then to the first substantive item of the agenda this evening, I'll turn to agenda item number 8, which is report of the Cabinet Member for Finance. It is agenda item 8A, Property Asset Management Plan 2021 through to 2022. It is a key decision, number 852, and I'll turn to, at pages 43 to 56 of the agenda, and I will turn at this point to Councillor Evans to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. This asset management plan sets out how the Council's property portfolio will contribute to the main aims and key priorities in the Council plan, and an up-to-date asset management plan is an essential requirement for Council to manage its assets more effectively. A review of Council's property and assets currently in progress will shortly be complete. More work is needed in order to develop a complete 5-year plan. The 21-22 Property and Asset Management Plan is therefore a refresh of the current plan whilst the review is completed. The attached appendix provides an update with regard to co-location of services, maintaining assets, investment portfolio review and property disposals. There is one recommendation, Chair, at 6.1.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr. Hill, anything you wish to add at all?
Just one thing, Chairman. At the bottom of page 44 on the recommendation, the date, it should say 4th of March 2020, not 20, the extraordinary council date. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So that's basically a slight tweak to be adopted.
Yes.
Yep, not a problem at all. Okay, thank you. Are there any comments, questions, observations in relation to this item? Okay, thank you. So I will move to the recommendations at page 44 of the report, and I'll ask if there is any dissent from the adoption of those recommendations. And I take that as a no, and those recommendations agreed. Thank you. The next agenda item is 8B. It's the council tax reduction scheme. Though I do believe in strict terms, this is an item for Councillor Dukes from memory. And I do know that there's been communication that it would be Councillor Dukes outlining this item as opposed to Councillor Evans. I can see nods, and I'm on the right track with that. So at this point, I'll hand over to Councillor Dukes to outline this item, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And before we start, I'd like to alert members to the fact that this report is in fact a pre-version of the final report, and there are some amendments to be made to this report before it goes to full council. One of those will be the removal of all gender-specific references to make a more general gender-neutral, and also the first bullet point at 3.2.5. I think I'm right there. The figure of 16,600 needs to be changed to 16,000 per annum. I've asked officers to check as well through the report to make sure there are in fact no other changes that need to be made before it goes to full council. Thank you. However, the main thrust of the report and the rest of the figures within the report remain the same. So therefore, the purpose of this report is to set up the council scheme for council tax reduction, or CTR, for 21-22. This has to be in place following council approval by the 11th of March 2021 in order to come into effect from the 1st of April 2021. As you remember, last year we changed our scheme to a banded scheme, and this has meant a lot less administration and made bills much easier to understand for residents, and to also stop a lot of the changes that were having to be made throughout. Whenever anybody's benefits changed, they would have to make a reclaim in their council tax. That has now changed because of the banded system. As you will see at 3.3.1, the estimated cost of the current scheme is approximately 7.87 million, and assuming an increase in line with last year of 4.99%, this would increase the cost of the current scheme to approximately 8.26 million. That's a lesser contribution. The Bassett Law contribution is 10.38%, which would be 820,000 in 2020-21, rising to 860,000 in 2022. An increase of £40,000, if my maths is right. At 3.3.2, you can see the banded scheme and the estimated cost for each band. And at 3.3, there is a graph illustrating how caseload has fluctuated during 2021, rising out of about with a rise of about 6.4% due to the impact of COVID. Its impact was mainly seen in the lower bands of support, and particularly within those working age claimants. The new universal credit claims through furloughed workers. However, the government grant of £150 per household has mitigated some of this, and the caseload is gradually starting to level off. However, if we see a loss of the £20 uplift in universal credit, we may see more people falling back into these bands. As I mentioned earlier, that the banded scheme, which started last April, has been much easier to administer, and not all changes in circumstances have an effect on the level of CT that the household is entitled to. It also reduces the number of repeat bills we have to send out during the year and confusion about what to pay. Although there are no real fundamental changes to the existing scheme and we will continue to work on the band levels that we set last year, we are proposing a rise this year in line with CPI, in line with other benefits, particularly through DWP. This will mean that we will avoid people reaching the cliff edge where they may just tip over into another band as their benefits increase. If there are any further increases in benefits by DWP, it is proposed to ensure that the scheme reflects these in the future. As you will see at 5.5, the cost of the scheme is outlined based on a 4.99 council tax increase. The cost of the current scheme, 7.87 million, that's for 2021, and Bassett Law's share of that is 820, as I said before. The 499 council tax increase would rise this to 8.6 million, Bassett Law's share being 860,000, an increase of £40,000. This assumption is based on that 499 increase, and any amendments, e.g. new updating of provision or increase by the CPI on the CPI published before we implement the scheme. Remember that there is a budget on the 6th of March. Before we implement the scheme, together with these amendments proposed in this report, will be included in the final version, which will commence on the 1st of April 2021. There are two options to consider. Option one, as I have outlined above, is to make the amendments outlined and follow the CPI increase to retain the banded scheme as it is keeping some kind of stability in what is a very difficult time. The other option is not to make any changes at all to the scheme, but this does hold the risk of many residents moving to a lower band where they could see a significant increase in the percentage of council tax they have to pay. This is outlined at 5.2. The final conclusions are outlined and proposed changes are outlined at 6.1 to 6.2, with a proposal to accept the option at 5.1. And I point members to the recommendations at 7.1 and 7.2. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hill, anything you wish to add?
I have nothing to add, Chair, but happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any comments or observations in relation to this item at all? I will take that as a no. And thank you, Councillor Deeks, for outlining at the start that there's some tweaks to be made before this arrives at full council. So that's all dealt with. So the recommendations have been outlined at 7.1 and 7.2 on page 63. Is there any, turn to Cabinet colleagues now, is there any disagreement or dissent from those recommendations? Take that as a no, and those are agreed and adopted. Thank you very much. I will next turn to agenda item 8C, Treasury Management Policy and Strategy 2021 to 22, running through until 2023 to 24. Key decision 854 to be found at pages 65 to 112. And I'll turn back to Councillor Evans to outline this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report, Chair, relates to Treasury Management Policy and Treasury Management Strategy. There is a reason I differentiate between the two. The Treasury Management Strategy incorporates the borrowing strategy, the investment strategy, the minimum revenue provision policy and the prudential indicators. It determines the manner in which Council's Treasury function is managed. The Treasury Management Policy is reviewed on an annual basis and falls under the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy's Code of Practice, and this includes a statutory requirement to provide a balanced budget, including 1, budget calculations for each financial year, for any revenue costs that flow from capital financing decisions and thereby limiting capital expenditure to an affordable level. 2, taking into account interest payments caused by increased borrowing for additional capital expenditure. And 3, any increases in running costs from new capital projects. The Local Government Act of 2003 requires that Council, under the Sitford Treasury Management Code of Practice, therefore has to set prudential and treasury indicators for the next 3 years, and this to ensure capital investment is affordable, prudent and sustainable. The Act also requires Council to set out its Treasury strategy for borrowing and prepare an annual investment strategy. Sitford requirements are set out at paragraph 3.4. Information regarding prudential indicators and the borrowing strategy and the annual investment strategy is provided at paragraph 3.5, and further details can be found in Appendix 1. For this report, Chair, there are 7 recommendations from 6.1 to 6.7.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hill, anything you wish to add at all?
Just one brief thing, and that's that the one significant change in the Treasury Management Policy this year is the increase of the amount we can place with any one institution. And that's been forced really by the fact that we've had quite a lot of money from the government, which we've struggled to place sometimes with our existing limits. So that is now built into the Treasury Management Strategy, and it reinforces what was decided on the members' delegated decision earlier in the year. Happy to answer any questions with that, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Any comments or observations in relation to this item at all? If not, then the recommendations 6.1 through to 6.7 have been outlined running at pages from pages 68 to 69. Is there any dissent from the adoption of those recommendations? No. Thank you. Those are agreed. Thank you, colleagues. I will next turn to agenda item 8D, General Fund Revenue Budget 2021 to 22 to 2025-26. It is a key decision number 855 to be found at pages 113 to 133. And again, I will turn to Councillor Evans to introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report details budget proposals for 21-22 along with the considerations involved in producing a balanced budget for 21-22 and the savings targets for future years as shown at paragraph 3.1. Taking an overview, the budget has to consider net expenditure against gross income from services and the planned use of reserves. The Council's budget requirement is measured by the expenditure and can be funded from external finances, including the revenue support grant and the retained business rates, and also by council tax. The table at paragraph 3.6 shows the budget requirement for 21-22 is 15.710 million. Turning to budget pressures in 21-22 and 22-23, because of the delay to the fair funding review and business rates reforms, the savings target for 21-22 has been rolled forward into 22-23. This means there is no savings target for 21-22, and the new savings target for 22-23 is 1.155 million. We believe the identified budget pressures after 22-23 can be contained. The provisional local government finance settlement is, in the absence of funding reforms, a rollover of the 2021 settlement, but it is for 1 year only. The settlement funding assessment consists of the revenue support grant and the business rates baseline. This has been reduced to 25% of our net budget for 21-22, and the level of reduction is clearly shown in the table at 3.16. We know the revenue support grant will disappear at the end of 21-22. We don't have knowledge of business rates reforms, and we assume the new homes bonus will continue after 21-22. Business rates matter because the current approach allows local authorities to benefit from supporting business growth. Predicting the level of movement in the business rate tax base in such uncertain times is a challenge, further complicated by the number of successful appeals against new valuations. Since the COVID-19 outbreak, the level of appeals has increased significantly. The fact is, Chair, that we face a number of significant uncertainties outlined in paragraph 3.24. Inflation is another budget consideration. Consequently, a 2% pay award in 21-22 and thereafter is included in the budget. Despite the pressures on the budget, Bassett Law will still provide discretionary grants to the third sector, as shown in the table at paragraph 3.31. Councillor community grants remain unchanged. Moving to council tax. Due to tight budget constraints, the budget assumes a £5 increase, resulting in a new figure of £183.48 per Band D property. This represents a 2.8% increase, or 10 pence per week. And I remind members that the proposed council tax base for collection purposes is 35,771.49 Band D properties for 21-22, the growth of 398 properties. 50.8% of properties in Bassett Law are in Band A, and the increase results in a council tax of £122.32 for Band A, an annual increase of £3.33, which is 6 pence a week. The collection fund relates to council's estimate of council collection fund transactions for council tax, which then enables the three major precepting authorities to take account of any surplus or deficit. The pandemic adversely affected the 2021 deficit of 963,000. And government is allowing councils to recover the deficit over the next 3 years. The recommendation is that the collection rate stays at 98%, and estimates are shown at paragraph 3.43. The 40% retained business rate income allocated to Bassett Law is much higher than the amount central government deems necessary. This would normally mean a tariff paid back to government for distribution as a top-up to other councils. However, Bassett Law is part of the Nottinghamshire Business Rates Pool, so any tariff or top-up is applied to the pool as a single entity. The appointment of a dedicated business property inspector and the resultant increase in rateable value has proved a benefit to both this council and the Nottinghamshire pool, and the NNDR1 return was submitted to government by the 31st of January and is shown at Appendix 3. With regards to robustness of estimates, members can see at paragraph 3.54 details of 1. The general fund revenue expenditure, which includes the 2% pay increase in 21-22 and thereafter, plus the details relating to council's contribution to the pension fund and the new pay structure following the job evaluation process. Members should note no inflationary increases have been applied to general budgets and that council is currently under-borrowed, thus keeping borrowing interest lower. And 2, the general fund revenue income, which deals with interest rate assumptions, a 3.1% minimum increase on income budgets and the local government finance settlement. This is revenue support grant of 229,000 and 16.9 million retained business rates collected in 21-22, plus a further amount of 392,000. This is less than in previous years due to the closure of a power station. The General Fund Provisions and Reserves deals with the corporate contingency and legal contingency funds for which each has a budget of 100,000. The health and safety contingency budget of 25,000 is also included. The housing revenue account, which relates to the national social rent policy that allows for rent increases. For 21-22, a rent increase of 1.5% in Bassetlaw is included in the budget. The capital programme and funding, details of which are in a separate account, but members are aware that capital schemes are subject to capital receipts and external bids, though prudential borrowing is used for long life assets. And the statement of accounts relates to the financial management arrangements that are in place. Moving on to adequacy of reserves, and this is really matters to us. The general reserve is a corporate contingency to be used for any purpose within the legal powers of the council. For example, dealing with unforeseen budget pressures. Members will probably be asked to approve the use of the reserve to fund the deficit created by costs associated with the pandemic. Council will maintain a minimum working balance of 1 million and 1.3 million for the housing revenue account. The Section 151 officer has concluded that estimates are sufficiently robust and that the level of reserve and balances forecasted for the 31st of March 2021 are adequate. Looking at future issues and prospects, it is hoped these will become clearer in 21-22. Currently, there is the impact of the pandemic affecting payment of business rates, payment of council tax with increased claims for the local council tax reduction scheme, a negative effect on the council tax base, and movement towards universal credit, plus council's ongoing loss of income and increased expenditure. Added to this is the uncertainty about future funding reforms. Chair, members need to be aware that the council is exposed to a number of risks and uncertainties which could affect its financial position and, consequently, the deliverability of the proposed budget. Furthermore, council has to address a budget shortfall of 1.155 million in 22-23, which means all actions within the efficiency plan are essential. There are 6 recommendations at 7.1 to 7.6, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed for outlining that report. Mr. Hill, anything you wish to add?
Yes, please, Chair. An update and a comment, if I may. Throughout the report, we talk about provisional local government finance settlements. I can tell you that was debated in the House yesterday. Today we've got notification that that provisional settlement is now the final set. A few alterations affecting a few councils up and down the country, but we're not one of them. So the figures that you see before you are finalised now. And that includes the referendum limit on council tax at 2% or £5. The second thing is, I will add, we have found it really challenging this year to get a balanced budget, but nevertheless we have a balanced budget. And a lot of the authorities up and down the country are either struggling to balance the budgets or having to borrow capital and apply for capital directives in order to balance the budgets in future years, which is obviously not a sustainable position. We've got that balanced budget, but having said that, the big challenge will come next year when we've got a 1 point, as Councillor Evans has pointed out, we've got a 1.155 million gap in the budget. Assuming the interest rates and the fair funding review are introduced in 22-23, as you've seen from previous years, these have been pushed back 2 years now, and that keeps being pushed back. So hopefully we'll get those reforms and we can get on a solid footing after that. Happy to answer any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Before I open things further, the Chief Executive's indicated.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points, I think. The first being that, as the portfolio holders mentioned, I think we're going through some pretty significant change, which is going to impact on local government finance. You've seen ASOS and Boohoo buy up a variety of previous high street brands, but not taking the shops. And I do think that the momentum for a change of regime for national non-domestic rates is long overdue. And if that is to be the bedrock of local government finance for the future, then I think local government is a very significant stakeholder in that debate, and I think it needs to come forward. The second thing is, I think this year's budget has been a gargantuan task. If you consider the amount of income that's been lost and the forecasting that's got to be put in place as we deal with this pandemic, it really is quite significant. And I would like to pay tribute to the Director of Corporate Resources, who I think has kept everybody on the straight and narrow, not only in terms of getting this budget done, but also with some plans, I think, for future years, which hopefully will mean that the council won't have to contort too much to balance future budgets. And then the last thing, I think, is something touched on by Mr. Hill, and that is the state of local government throughout the country. 6 authorities are in negotiations with the MCHLG already in terms of bailing out their financial situation, and the local government press has said there's another 6 at least which are in the same position. So the fact that this council is not in those categories, and there is a very, very good firm hand on the tiller in the shape of Mr. Hill, I think members can take as much reassurance as they can from what is a very challenging set of circumstances and a lot of unknowns, which does make this task of his so much more difficult. But it's the bedrock on which we work, Chair, and without the firm finances, I'm afraid to say everything else becomes decidedly wobbly, and we are not in that position. And therefore, I'd just like to pay tribute to the finance team for getting this done and getting members this far. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. And I would certainly wish to share those and echo those comments. And thanks to Mr. Hill, Councillor Evans, and everyone that sits behind that team in order to turn the wheels and ensure that what we have here is a balanced budget, despite incredible difficulties over the course of this period. And we have a solid foundation and prudent financial management, unlike many other authorities around the country. So we are very well positioned and very fortunate in terms of the decisions that have been made in the past, and also very fortunate for the way in which we've been able to manage things over the course of this very difficult period. Thank you very much. Any comments, questions, observations at all in relation to this item? I can see Councillor Brand has indicated. So, Councillor Brand.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to thank the administration and the officers for yet again including the councillor community grants in the budget. I've said it before and I'll say it again now, and I probably will in the future, how important this is to be able, for members to be able to support local grassroots organisations when sometimes £100 or maybe £200 is enough to keep them afloat when otherwise they would go under and it'd be a loss to our communities. So thank you very much again for including it.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm glad that we are able to include it, so that's really positive, and I know that local groups across the district do welcome that source of funding in order to support activities. It is very important, and I'm glad that we've been able to continue with that with these proposals. Any other comments or observations at all? If not, and I'll be minded to turn to the recommendations that we have through at 7.1 through to 7.6 at page 128 through to 129. And I would ask if there is any dissent from Cabinet colleagues with the any disagreement or dissent with those recommendations. I take that as a No, in which case they are agreed and adopted. Thank you. Next, another finance report that I will turn to is 8E, Capital Investment Strategy 2021-22 through to 2025-26. It is a key decision, number 856, to be found at pages 135 to 163. And I'll turn to Councillor Evans again, please.
Thank you, Chair. It is a statutory requirement under the SIPFA Prudential Code to produce an annual capital investment strategy which outlines the principles and framework that influence Council's capital investment decisions and thereby the achievement of Council's priorities and objectives in the Council plan. The strategy defines how the capital programme is formulated, identifying both issues and options that influence capital spending, including how resources and the capital programme are managed. Details of the capital investment strategy can be seen at Appendix A, and there is one recommendation at 6.1, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hill, anything to add at all?
Nothing further to add on this one, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Any comments, questions, observations in relation to this item? If not, and I will take that there isn't, the recommendation, page 136, recommendation 6.1 is, I'll turn to colleagues, is there any disagreement with the adoption of that recommendation? No, thank you, I'll take that as agreed. And then the next agenda item I will turn to is 8F of the agenda, Budget Monitoring and Capital Programme Update Report to the 31st of December 2020, key decision 861, to be found at pages 165 to 196. Again, Councillor Evans, to outline this report, please.
Chair, this is an update on Council's third quarter spending position for 2021 and relevant up to the 31st of December. Starting with the General Fund Revenue Budget, the table at paragraph 3.7 is a summary of the third quarter position across all portfolios, showing a predicted overspend of 863,000. A summary of the main elements affecting the General Fund Revenue Budget, including the high impact of COVID-19, can be seen in the table at paragraph 3.9, and further analysis can be seen at Appendix 1. Members should also note that of the 863,000 overspend, 751,000 is COVID-related expenditure or loss of income. The overspend between quarter 2 and quarter 3 has moved by 118,000, as can be seen in the table at paragraph 3.12, and this will reduce balances of the 31st of March 2020 from 3,569 million to 3.569 million to 2.706 million. Never gave Mr. Hill a heart attack then. Turning to fees and charges. Table at 3.15 shows the forecast outturn at quarter 3 is for an overachievement of 95,000. This, of course, excludes the impact of COVID-19. For the housing revenue account, there is a predicted overspend of 42,000, as shown in the table at paragraph 3.18. The movement between quarter 2 and quarter 3 of 25,000 can be seen in the table at paragraph 3.22, and I must point out that in the housing revenue account, a £355,000 cost has been incurred due to COVID-19, otherwise there would have been a significant underspend. About COVID-19 and the impact on council finances, council has received a number of government grants, but is still carrying COVID-related cost pressures because full reimbursement from government has not materialised. As reported previously, government has applied eligibility parameters and pricing principles shown at paragraph 3.23. Moving to the capital programme and expenditure for both the general fund and the housing revenue account, the initial capital budget for 2021 totalled 22.921 million. At paragraph 3.27, table 1 shows a reconciliation of approved budget movements, increasing the capital programme to 40.857 million. There are now additions and amendments requiring approval for the general fund and the housing revenue account. The latter has nil impact on the budget total. A summary can be found at paragraph 3.28 and further details can be seen in Appendix 3. These approvals will increase the capital programme by 48,000, giving a new total of 40.905 million. The current level of capital expenditure at the end of Q3 is 8.099 million, or 20% of the total budget. Expenditure for the year is expected to be around 18.327 million, and slippage is predicted to be approaching 22.161 million. This is shown in the table at paragraph 3.30. An update on all capital projects can be seen at Appendix 4. It should be noted that the capital spend of 20% against the total budget is mainly due to the pandemic. The manner of resourcing the current capital programme budget is shown at paragraph 3.35 in table 3, and capital receipts remain low. And this was a key consideration when the capital programme from 2021 to 2024-25 was developed. And table 4 at paragraph 3.36 gives a clear picture of Council's capital receipts. Regarding Treasury management, the table at paragraph 3.39 outlines loans held by Council. There has been no long-term borrowing during this quarter. For investments, Council revised the approved maximum limits, and this was due to elevated levels of cash from government grants to businesses and individuals in response to the COVID-19 situation. And these grants were and still are distributed by local councils, but this significant influx of cash caused a change in the level of investment by Council. To mitigate any breach of levels invested, a delegated decision reference number 20-2020-21 was approved on the 11th of December, and the Treasury management strategy will be amended accordingly. At the 31st of December, Council had a total of 27.660 million invested, as shown in the table at paragraph 3.43. Members' no investments are affected by the Bank of England base rate, which currently stands at 0.1%. Therefore, the projected investment outturn position at year end is predicted to show a shortfall of 77,000. Council has operated within the Treasury limits and prudential indicators. There are no issues to highlight. Chair, I remind members that for the third quarter of the year, there is a predicted overspend of 863,000 for the general fund and a 42,000 overspend for the housing revenue account. The impact of COVID-19, which has been estimated and included, is further affected by the continued reduction of grant income and the current uncertainty regarding financial reforms and future changes to business rates. There are 4 recommendations, Chair, starting at 7.1.
Thank you very much indeed for that comprehensive outline. Mr. Hill, is there anything you wish to add at all?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to reassure members that the COVID pressure that you've seen in there, and there are still COVID pressures emerging through extra loss of income, extra expenditure, and defaults in business rate payments and council tax payments. that the COVID pressure that's not covered by government grants of 751,000 can be covered by reserves. We've built the reserves up over a number of years deliberately to take account of the uncertainty surrounding, firstly, Brexit, and secondly, the government reforms. But now that COVID's here, it means that we've got to use it for that. There's a lot of other purposes I'd sooner use it for, but just to reassure members, there is money there that will cover that in 2021. Thank you, Chair. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. I'll turn now and ask if there are any comments or observations. I think Councillor Shaw has indicated.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to record on record my thanks to Mr Hill and the officers and to Councillor Evans for the suite of financial reports this evening, the balanced budget, and considering the unprecedented year, it's absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Any other comments or observations at all? Councillor Scawthorne.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to mirror the Chief Executive's comments earlier, and again from the housing side, I'm sure Alison wouldn't mind me saying a big thank you for the way that our finances are managed. I know we've had a overspend this year, but I'm sure our finances are in safe hands with June and Dave and everybody who sits behind Dave. I think we've got to thank all head of services for the amount of work they've done through this pandemic and how they've kept us all on the short and narrow, keep us going forward. Again, I know it's worrying times for everybody, as we've seen in the reports, but I'm sure we're in safe hands with our finance team. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And I do reflect on the. First of all, I fully support the comments that you've made, and in addition to that, I do reflect just a few weeks ago about the incredibly ambitious housing capital programme that we've agreed here at Cabinet that's moving forwards, that has even more work to undertake in the future in the area of housing, and that would not be possible had it not been for our decisions and how we wanted to manage that budget and the priorities around that budget. So incredibly positive for the future, but we can't do that without a very robust management of the finances for the housing revenue account and also the general fund. Any other comments or observations at all? If not, and I can't see anyone indicating, I'll be minded to turn to the recommendations that we have at page 179, 4 recommendations there. Are there any dissent from those recommendations? No, thank you. I'll take those as agreed. Next,
Chair.
sorry, Councillor White.
Yeah, I don't know how to do this, but I want to raise a point of order. A member is recording this meeting, and whilst I'm very happy for this meeting to be live streamed because that's entirely appropriate, I don't think it's acceptable for a member to be recording this meeting. A member's recording the meeting? Yes. If you look at the left-hand corner of your screen, there's a red dot, and if you put your cursor on that red dot, you'll see that a member is recording this meeting. Can I say thank you for raising this? I did see the red dot. I have to say that naively, I took it as being the authorities' management and live streaming process as opposed to anything else. I'm going to turn to officers supporting this meeting. If you could just assist us in establishing, is this being recorded by a member? If so, who, please?
Chairman, this is the clerk. I had in fact just spotted it just prior to Councillor White commenting. I've actually sent a message through to the solicitor.
Okay, thank you. I'm taking that you just done that.
Yes, yes.
Okay. And I'm sorry, but I think kind of as chair, I just want to establish kind of what I'm guessing that your query is. Well, I'm guessing that your query is this an appropriate thing for a member to do in these circumstances?
Yes, and I believe that we had we previously have to inform each other if we intend to record each other. You know,
Right.
when we had face-to-face meetings, we had to have full knowledge that we were being recorded, and so this is out with our provisions within our normal meetings.
Well, yes. I'm going to. I can see colleagues indicating. I absolutely understand the reason why, and I will take these points in a moment. If I could just inquire, please, to the council solicitor, if there's any clarity on the point that's been raised, because I have to say that on hovering my arrow key over that red dot, I think I can now see who the member is that's recording. And I think that I'm just about at the point where I think I have to inquire of that member why this meeting is being recorded by that member when this meeting is being live streamed for the benefit of the public. And actually, there's no need to be recording this meeting because it's a matter of public record.
Chair, I think possibly the facilitator can turn that recording off, and I think she's going to check that now. Certainly I can't do it as clerk because I didn't book the meeting.
Understood.
So, yeah, let's see whether we can do that.
I understand the technicalities of these things.
Yes.
There's a way of doing it.
And I think actually it is possibly something that can be done in error, but
Right. Well,
I think that's possibly being stopped now.
Well, and I can see that it says the recording is being saved on my screen. I would expect that the member would delete this recording.
Excuse me, Chair, just to let you know I have stopped it and I'll see if I can delete anything that's been saved anywhere as well.
Please do.
Chair, I think the council solicitor wishes to speak now.
Please do that.
No, sorry. No, that's incorrect.
Okay.
No, I was only going to say I would need to check the point if you wanted advice, and would suggest we took the stream down for 5 minutes to do so if you want to, or we can continue and I can check in the meantime.
Well, can I take the points from, and I'm sorry, I didn't appreciate who came in first, but if I can take Councillor Brandon and Councillor Scotthorne's observations, please.
Yes, Chair. I was just going to point out, as you had done, that if you hover your cursor over, you can see which member is recording. But you beat me to it, so that's all I was going to say.
Sorry, Councillor Scotthorne.
Yes, Chair. I was just wondering if Councillor Quigley would like to comment on this, whether he'd like to comment on if he is in the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scotthorne. I think I am rather duty bound at this point. That the recording has been stopped. I'd like to inquire if Councillor Quigley, is there any explanation why you've been recording the meeting?
Most people's
Sorry, Chair, I wasn't aware that I was.
Oh, that's a shame. I'm sure that you'll delete that recording, won't you?
Well, I wouldn't even know where it was.
Or maybe with some additional support, you'll be able to ensure that you've deleted that.
By all means. No, I mean, if I've clicked on a button inadvertently, then I apologise. But there's no point in me recording the meeting because it's on YouTube or whatever it is we stream it to.
Well, that's what I found it so bizarre.
Yeah. I may have inadvertently caught a button when I was clicking on the 3 dots or whatever it is. I don't even know where the record. I didn't know that members could actually record the meeting.
Well, it was a new one on me as well. So I'm sure that there'll be people supporting this meeting that you'll be able to speak to afterwards, and ensure it's being.
Yeah, if IT can help me find out where it goes, then I'll gladly delete it. I don't need to record it.
Well, yeah, that's what found it a little bit odd. So I'm sure that colleagues supporting the meeting will be able to get in touch with you about all that. So that's great. Excellent. So that matter, I'll take it as that matter's been dealt with at this point. Okay, excellent. In which case, I'll move on to the agenda item 9. I'll turn to at this point. Report of the Cabinet Member for Health and Community Wellbeing. Agenda item 9A, Children and Young People's Plan 2021 to 2025. Key decision number 866, to be found at pages 197 to 201. And I will turn to Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. I haven't got my video on because my Wi-Fi is very weak. So to make sure I stay online, you won't see my face, but that's not an issue. Thank you to Mr. Brown and officers for producing this excellent report. The purpose of the report is to seek Cabinet approval for the initial proposals to refresh the Children and Young People's Plan for 2021 to 2025. The Children and Young People's Plan sets out the priorities and the outcomes to be delivered in partnership to children and young people in Bassetlaw to achieve their potential. The development of the new Children and Young People's Plan requires setting priorities for the next 4 years. And as we've talked tonight, we're very aware of the global pandemic. And as we're currently still in the response phase of the pandemic, the future uncertainty, it is difficult to identify all the priorities for the new plan until the full impact has been gauged. It's felt important for reasons indicated within the report that its focus is maintained and we're able to identify the key priorities going forward. In recent reports, the Children's Commissioner has highlighted the significant challenges facing young people and the economic factors impact on school, exams and lack of social interaction. And it is not without the sound basis that commentators are referring to it as a lost generation. So it's hugely important that we focus on this plan going forward. And the 2021 to 2025 new plan has key priorities identified within it, which you will see from the report are really important. Skills and education opportunities, safeguarding, child poverty. And within child poverty, the pandemic has already impacted on jobs and economy, and child poverty is projected to rise. The report is being drawn to assess the impact of the COVID-19 on child poverty in Nottinghamshire, and it's really important that we look forward to the child poverty element of it. Another key priority is health and wellbeing. The health and wellbeing of children is always been a key priority for the council, working with our partners to ensure that we can support health and activity and wellbeing. Sorry, carry on. Local democracy. The council wants to encourage local democracy within our children and young people. And another area of work through the Bassetlaw Youth Council is very proactive and grows in strength and influence. We have also, full council have just agreed to the proposal of a youth council for the youth mayor in December 2020, which will add another role to raise aspirations amongst young people. This work continues to encourage active participation in democratic processes and involvement in local decision making and local plans. You will see that we're talking about the green agenda, the digital divide, and mental health and emotional well-being being absolutely central in our efforts to prioritise the impact for many young people in this last year. The introduction of mental health champions in schools has already been noted, and the need for around mental health, but the pandemic has caused an increase in anxiety, loneliness and isolation, since the lockdown and the close of schools. It is therefore important that we look at the recommendations which set out in 6.1, which says that this is an interim report to be approved and for the development of the revised Children and Young People's Plan for 2021 to 25 will be presented to Cabinet later in the year following more work around the pandemic. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brown, anything you wish to add at all?
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, Councillor Shaw's alluded to the Child Commissioner's recent reports that have highlighted child poverty and mental health as being major concerns as we move forward. And as is mentioned, we have had in a series of meetings with County Council colleagues who are working on the child poverty agenda. There will be significant work around that in terms of what measures, working jointly, partnership, we can do to address some of those challenges. And I've been on a call earlier today with colleagues at the CCG who are very cited on the mental health impacts, and I think there will be some announcements locally about further support around that agenda, which I'm sure we'll all welcome. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That's very positive indeed. If I could turn then to colleagues, ask if there are any comments or observations. I think Councillor Dukes indicated, then Councillor Scotthorne.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I welcome the comments by Mr. Brown at the end of the report there. There is nothing more important at the moment than looking after our children's mental health. They are suffering enormously. Young people are stuck in a lost year. Having been working in schools up until December, up until the beginning of this term, I could see myself the effect that the isolation, that the fear, that the uncertainty was causing in the anxiety it was causing within our young people, and it is really, really important that anything we can do as a district council, as a CCG, is put in place to support young people, to give them as many opportunities as possible to thrive, to learn through play, to learn through doing, to learn by meeting their peers. It's really, really important. I'd also like to highlight, as chair of the food bank, that we are seeing more and more families struggling. And it is really important that we all campaign for the £20 uplift in UC not to be taken away. This is a real vital lifeline to families at the moment, and you cannot take it away. We must keep that in place. And finally, from me, we know about food poverty. We know about warmth and energy poverty. But one of the real problems that we have, particularly in our rural outlying villages and rural areas, is digital poverty. And we mustn't forget that if we are going to engage our young people who live in our rural settings, they need access to the best possible digital outcomes, and we're not giving them. And we need the government to bring back the commitment to full broadband coverage across the country. They took that away last year, and we need to have it back. It needs to they need to fulfill their promise of 100% coverage of broadband, and nothing has highlighted more the need for proper broadband across our district than the current crisis. So again, I'm calling on the government, calling on everybody to work hard to bring back that 100% coverage, because some of our areas will be missed out. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you very much indeed, and there's no doubt whatsoever of the importance of good quality connectivity for the benefit of business and young people, schools, education, and everything needs to be joined up a dam site better. And I certainly hope that as part of that solution, there'll be an acceleration in 5G rollout, which is part of the solution to overcome these difficulties. But also, it may well be a very straightforward way of working to increase productivity in the economy. So I sincerely hope that that can be done. Sorry, Councillor Scotthorne.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I welcome this report as well, to approve the initial proposal to refresh and develop the priorities in the Children and Young People's plan. Not to sound like a broken record, Chair, but I find myself saying again that Bassetlaw District Council are ahead of the game. I would like to highlight the work that Vanessa Cookson and the Bassetlaw Youth Council have been doing. The way that the Bassetlaw Youth Council has progressed, the recognition it gets from both communities and other local authorities in the short time it has been in place is a credit to all involved. Looking forward, the initiative of the new youth mayor to the council I look forward to inviting the new youth mayor to the council meetings and to sit down with me and talk about ways that young people see our housing services. Although this report is short in length, a third of it is talking about poverty and health and well-being of young people. I see firsthand the effects that the lockdown has been having on young people's health, both mentally and physically well-being. My worries is that the mental health services in Bassetlaw will not be able to cope, and ask that we challenge any reduction that may be planned. These services should be local and be accessible by all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any other comments, questions or observations on this item? I'll take that as a no. I'm very much looking forward to the youth mayor being put into position, and I think it was good that we were able to agree that a while back, so that to ensure that the youth mayor is in place for the new municipal year. So that's really positive. So we'll look forward to that. So the recommendation we have is at 6.1 on page 201. I'll turn to colleagues. Is there any disagreement or dissent from that recommendation being agreed? No. Okay, thank you. Therefore, that is adopted and agreed. I will turn next to agenda item 10, which is a report of the Cabinet Member for Regeneration, 10A in particular, Community Energy Procurement Scheme, Key Decision 863, pages 203 to 205. And if I could just say thank you to Councillor White for raising that point of order earlier on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The lockdown announcement of March last year radically changed our focus, putting the authority into a head-down treadmill march, continuing to deliver services while supporting business and vulnerable residents through the worst of this COVID nightmare. Yet, despite this, the authority has continued to be innovative and interventionist, delivering positive initiatives for the benefit of our communities. Examples this year include the plans for the radical refurbishment of Larwood House, the amazing investment plans for our council houses, the bringing forward of a skills hub in the centre of Worksop that's got the backing of D2N2, the delivery of a new enterprise centre in Worksop, alongside the building of new toilets in Worksop Town Centre and on the Canch. Interventions that we can all be rightly proud of. The I Chooser proposal that we are considering at tonight's Cabinet is another initiative that is being introduced for the benefit of local residents, as it will help reduce their energy bills, whilst at the same time supporting commitments to reduce carbon outputs within the community. I Chooser is an energy switching scheme that will enable residents to change to a supplier that prioritises energy suppliers with green energy tariffs, alongside the ability to reduce bills through its membership of an auction process. I Chooser is already working with other local authorities to promote this scheme. And should we agree to participate, we would need to promote this scheme via our website and all our marketing platforms. This would be fully supported by a communication plan designed by iChooser. This advertising process would last for about 6 weeks prior to the auction, which can be run up to 3 times a year. The council would receive a small fee associated with each residential switch, which would cover ongoing costs of marketing and the running of the scheme. Collective switching is an opportunity for residents to reduce the cost of their energy bills by combining their purchasing power and auctioning a group contract to the lowest bidding energy supplier. Results from iChooser have shown that there are an average of £243 per household through the collective switching, the average savings of £243 per household through collective switching. Successful switches are often limited to a 12-month contract, and residents will need to be informed that this will be an annual process to keep their energy bills low. Green energy tariffs mean that all energy consumption must be from renewable sources. There would be a 5-step process for residents interested in this scheme. For signing up, people register their interest, which is free and without commitment to complete a switch of their energy supplier. The auction, iChooser conducts an auction amongst pre-vetted suppliers. The personal offer, following the conclusion of the auction, residents receive a detailed offer that is obligation free, and the decision, residents decide if they accept the offer, and then the switching. iChooser will handle the rest of the switching process, letting residents experience lower costs. People have already asked, are we stepping into the realm of the failed Robin Hood scheme run by Nottingham City Council? That was an energy provision scheme, and what we are entering to is an exercise to reduce residents' bills through bulk purchasing that we are sponsoring. So I ask you to support the recommendations at 6.1 and 6.2.
Thank you very much indeed. Chief Executive. Sorry, Chief Executive, you're on mute.
I would just like to add to the report in terms of the wider context of this, and members will note that the author of the report is Robert Craighead, who is our new carbon reduction officer. He took a part in developing this report and is working with Mr. Armiger on a very far-reaching carbon reduction strategy. And as the Deputy Leader has said, the Council is trying to not just focus on COVID, but try and deal with the core business of developing things for the district as well. And I think this is just a heralding, really, of what hopefully will be a very far-reaching report in March for you on how we take things forward. His appointment has been very significant in terms of providing the capacity and expertise to take things forward. And I think just with one appointment and some of the work that you've seen in this report this evening, we are going to make a step change with this, which I think is very promising. On a personal note, I've been subject to an iChooser process. It is very straightforward and simple, and certainly hopefully I'll be providing a bit of ambassadorial support for this in the coming months. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any comments, questions, observations? I can see that Councillor Lee has indicated, and then Councillor Brand.
Thanks, Chair. I hadn't heard about this until Councillor White was talking about it, and I did look into it, and I can see that it's been very successful in other areas and has helped to lower energy bills for local residents, and I would be very supportive of this. Thank you. Thank
you very much indeed. Councillor Brand.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask that if this is approved this evening, what's the sort of timescale that this would work to? Do we have any idea?
Okay, Chief Executive.
So I think iChooser have about 3 auctions a year. There's a period, as has been outlined by Councillor White, of signing people up to do it once there's a deadline for that, iChooser then can go to the market and auction a number of people that will take up the offer. So I think it would be about 4 to 5 months from now. That is to say, when people would actually switch.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions, observations at all? No, it's certainly a very welcome innovation, and look forward to the opportunity of engaging with local people to ensure that they can get cheaper energy bills in the future. So I certainly think this is a very welcome step forwards. If there aren't any other observations at all or comments, then if we could turn to the recommendations at page 205, and I'll ask colleagues if there is any dissent from those being approved. No. Okay, that's therefore agreed. Thank you very much indeed. And next we'll move on to agenda item 11. It's a report that falls within my portfolio area as leader, policy, strategy and communications. In particular, I'll be referring to 11A, people, strategy and action plan, to be found at pages 207 through to 222. And I can see that Councillor Brand is heading off to another meeting. And thank you very much, Councillor Brand, for joining us and being able to make the contributions that you have. Thank you very much.
I'll go after this item if that's all right, Chair.
Not a problem, not a problem. So turning to the people, strategy and action plan at pages 207 to 222, I'll just say a few words by way of opening before handing over to Karen Childs to outline further details in relation to this report. I think if I can start at the point that the work of the authority has changed dramatically in the background as a consequence of COVID-19, and the people that work for the council have adapted tremendously to delivering the services that we have, adapting to new ways of working, which have been incredibly challenging up and down the country. But the reality is that people who work at Bassett Law have changed the way in which they've been working. They have also been changing the work that they have been doing in response to the pandemic. And over the course of this period, there is, I think Councillor Quigley is leaving us at this point. Thank you for joining us, Councillor Quigley. Over the course of the pandemic, staff have been engaged and consulted in terms of the impact upon their work, how they are, what additional support they need, and to enable them to do the work that is so important in order to support the area and deliver frontline services. What we have this evening is the outcome of a very large piece of work that really moves the authority and the work of the authority forwards, and the way in which we enable staff at the authority to do their job, to ensure that they can work effectively, and also ensure that we are looking to support their well-being as well. So within the people strategy, there is outlined basically a plan for the next few years that essentially looks to how we support staff, enabling staff to do their work, areas such as how we manage issues relating to succession planning, making sure that people have the right equipment to do their jobs, and also the supporting action plan, which essentially makes all that happen. It is fair to say that everyone across the board within the authority has done everything they possibly can to support the local community and support the work that has been vitally needed to support business, vulnerable people, people that have been in quite acute need, whether it is supporting the business grant process, supporting the hub, processing the applications that have been needed to support people who have experienced difficulties with employment and so on. And in light of that, and in light of trying to ensure that that people are enabled to support their own well-being, that there's a proposal in the report that in a subsequent year that there's the chance to have a day's leave with a particular focus on their individual well-being. And this is a package of measures within this report that is supported by senior management of the authority, trade unions, and managers, junior managers, and so on, and staff. And what I certainly feel here is a very positive response to the very difficult time that we've had, looking to manage the organisation forwards in a agile, enabled, and supported way. So the recommendations outlined down at 12.1 and 12.2 at page, and 12.3 through to 2.10 to 2.11 within the report. But at this point, I'll turn to Karen Childs, who may wish to add more in addition to what I've said.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think you make an important point when you talk about this plan being agile, and that's exactly what the action plan is designed to be. So the main focus of the actions in the plan are what's going to happen over the course of the next year, with some ideas for future years. But we very much want to get feedback from staff and improve the two-way communication processes so that we're getting more information from staff about what's important to them in meeting the aims and objectives of this people strategy. And I think it's fair to say that at this point in time, we wouldn't be able to say what we'll be doing in year 5, because as we've seen, there's been a great deal of change. We've responded as an authority to that change, and we can see what's important over the course of the next year, which has informed the plan for the first year. But after that, it's very much open to our employees to feed comments back to us so that we can then develop the plan each year for the following year. So it's a dynamic approach to maintaining our employees' well-being, enhancing their development opportunities, but importantly also ensuring that the customer experience is a key focus of this plan. So within it, there are actions to look at various processes across the council, standing in the customer's shoes, and ensure that we understand what's important to the customer, and therefore we can then look at our processes and see whether that's what's being delivered. And I think, again, that will help to improve our employees' well-being, because if they can see that they are providing a service that's valued, then you know, that is a factor in somebody's well-being. So I think that's it from me, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for the huge amount of work that's been put into making this happen. There's no doubt about that. Sorry, Councillor White.
Thank you. I very much welcome this report. I with other councillors attend the Joint Employee Council, and it was very much welcome there on all sides of the room, which gives the reassurance that this is a paper that has the support of our workforce. But what I value is that that we need to ensure that Bassett Law District Council is a good place for people to work, not just in terms of their well-being, but in terms of their career prospects, so that they can expand their experiences, they can improve their skills base, and that they can be proud of the place that they work. And I think that we're gaining a strong reputation with other authorities for that, but by having this plan in place actually reinforces those ambitions. And I personally want to use this opportunity to thank all staff and officers for the hard work and commitment and loyalty that they show this authority. And that is a two-way relationship, and it's partly because we ensure that people are valued when they come to work at Bassett Law District Council.
Thank you very much indeed. Any other comments or observations at all? Chief Executive.
Yes, thank you, Chair. From a strategic point of view, I think if you go back to last year at the start of the pandemic, we were talking about going back to what we had before wasn't to be seen as a victory, because life had changed, and we started talking about the concept of Bassett Law 2021. Well, I think the foundation work that Mrs. Childs has put in following the implementation of job evaluation last year has freed up her capacity to be far more strategic and interventionist in terms of organisational development than we've had before. And this is a prime example of just the sort of work that we're starting to look at now to adapt to the new circumstances that we've got, and also the fact that pay and grading has been implemented, and we now want to move on from that as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Any other comments or observations? If not, if we can turn to the recommendations at 210 and 211 and ask if there is any dissent from those recommendations being approved. No. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Next, agenda item 12. Sorry?
We were waving to Hazel.
Oh, apologies.
Not you yet, Simon.
No,
She waved at us first.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I didn't spot that. I do apologise.
It's what you do online nowadays.
Okay. I'll need to get with it better. Right. Moving on to agenda item 12A, reporting minutes of the Health and Safety Committee of the 7th of October 2020, pages 223 to 226 of the agenda. Are there any comments or observations in relation to that item? If not, I'll move to agenda item 12B, reporting minutes from Joint Employee Council on the 7th of October, pages 227 to 228 of the agenda. Again, are there any comments or observations on that item? No. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is section B, and that will be for items to be discussed in private. And in a moment, the live stream will be brought to an end as we move into a confidential session, basically consider a confidential report. I'd like to thank everyone for the contribution. Sorry, thank everyone for who's been observing this meeting. And before we terminate the live stream, can I please confirm that in accordance with Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, and after considering the public interest test set out by the officer in the body of the report, members agree that the following item of business involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 2 and 3, and therefore in accordance with section 100A of the Act, the press and public be excluded from the meeting. And this in particular relates to agenda item 13A, refurbishment of independent living schemes, Larwood House. Is there any dissent from that course of action? Take that as a no, in which case we will move into confidential session in a moment, but I will turn to the committee clerk and those supporting this meeting just to check that the live stream has been brought